Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the presentation. So today we're going to talk about employment law and how it relates to all of you here at Walt Disney World. Now, I know that we all come from different disciplines and various areas across property, but I promise that this information will be very important to each and every one of you. So we're going to talk about these different ideas and how you can then apply these ideas to your different work locations. So our goals here today are to discuss the various legal topics pertaining to employment, pertaining to all of you. And we want to just talk about how you, the managers here at Walt Disney World, are expected to work with these legal parameters and how you're expected to take these different ideas back to your work locations and help protect yourselves and Walt Disney World. The first area that I want to discuss is equal opportunity. And within equal opportunity, there are two laws that I want to talk about. The first is the Civil Rights Act. So the Civil Rights Act states that there can be no job discrimination based on sex, race, color, religion, or national origin. So what does this mean for all of you? That at your different work locations, you cannot discriminate in terms of hiring or firing, promotions, more responsibilities based on these different factors. The second law that I want to talk about is the Americans with Disabilities Act. So it's very similar to the Civil Rights Act in that it prohibits discrimination, but this time it's based on disabilities. So same thing, you cannot discriminate in terms of hiring, firing, promotions, things like that based on disabilities. And if you are working with an employee who has a disability, there must be reasonable accommodations made for that employee to help them work within your work environment. So for example, if you work with an employee who's in a wheelchair, you must reasonably accommodate them. So it's very important to be cognizant of these different laws, because if you were to violate them, we could be very vulnerable to lawsuits. The second area that I want to discuss is health. But within this idea of health, I want to talk about OSHA, which is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. So they are in charge of assuring safe and healthy working conditions for working men and women. And this idea is very important to each and every one of you, regardless of which area around property that you work, because you have to make sure that your employees have a safe working environment. On this slide, we have some photos that OSHA would definitely find concern with, and while they may seem comical, it is not something to be taken lightly. The safety of you and your employees is very important to us, and it is also very, very important to continually monitor your different work areas to make sure that your employees are provided with a safe working condition, because it helps you, it helps your employees, but it also protects the company from potential costly lawsuits. It helps protect you. So it's something to definitely keep in mind on a daily basis. Like I said earlier, it doesn't matter which area across property that you work in. You could be in merchandise, you could be in food and beverage, attractions. Every area has different requirements in order to keep their employees safe, but it is very important that every one of you takes these steps to protect yourselves, your employees, and Walt Disney World. The next area that I want to focus on is compensation and benefits. And within this area, there are two laws that I want to discuss. The first is the Equal Pay Act. And as the picture there shows, the big idea with the Equal Pay Act is equal pay for equal work. So men and women in your various work locations cannot be paid differently for performing the same work. Now, unfortunately, there's a little bit of ambiguity around the idea of equal work. So it's very important to remain cognizant of this to make sure that your employees are performing the same duties, they're given the same amount of responsibilities, and they are paid the same for performing the same duties. The second law that I want to talk about is the Fair Labor Standards Act. And the two big ideas under this act are minimum wage and overtime pay. So we do all pay our employees here over minimum wage, so that is not really a big area that you should have to worry about too much, but most of you all should focus on overtime pay. So if you are requiring your employees to work overtime, they do have to receive that overtime pay, which again is something to constantly remain vigilant about, because this lack of overtime pay could open the company up to a potential lawsuit. Another area that I want to talk about is labor relations. And within labor relations, we need to discuss the National Labor Relations Act. So this law allows employees to form unions and collectively bargain together on behalf of employees. So here at Walt Disney World, we do have a very prominent union, and recently we just negotiated a new contract with the union employees, which is good news. But what's important for you, the managers, to be aware of is that you cannot treat these employees differently because they are in a union. You cannot discriminate against them. You cannot discourage employees from joining the union. The National Labor Relations Act protects these employees, so that could again open us up to a potential lawsuit. So it's very important to be aware of this, to be respectful to the unions throughout your different work locations. If any situation were to arise where an employee has a complaint they want to file, or they want to take legal action, we want to try to solve the dispute through arbitration. So we just want to point this out to you all to be prepared in case this situation does arise. Hopefully it will not, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. To sum it all up, the best thing that all of you can do in your separate work locations is to first and foremost stay up to date and be familiar with these different laws and regulations that we have to abide by. And once you're familiar with them, constantly reevaluate how your workplaces are operating. And if you see any changes that need to be made, please do not hesitate. You all are empowered to improve your individual work locations. And if you have any questions about anything at all, anything that we've talked about today, anything that you see at your work location, please do not hesitate. Come to me, come to someone in the Human Resources Department, and we will do everything that we can to make sure you are all set up for success. So thank you so much for listening to the presentation today. I hope you all have a fantastic day.